As I said, Purdue loses 78-65. It was a game that really Purdue just you could just tell didn't have it. Simply put, like just both sides of the ball, shots weren't falling. Defense, they're still definitely working through some things. And so it just kind of results in this game where Kentucky is able to control for pretty much the entire second half. TKR ends up with 19 points and 7 of 15 shooting, Lawyer 14, Smith 11 points and 5 assists. Jacobson ends up with 9. Not a ton of production outside of the big three, and even a few of Jacobson's buckets come kind of later in the game. Keeping it high level at first, I guess, what was like the single thing or two that stood out the most?
We couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. And like there's not going to be too many games that Purdue wins when Braden and Fletcher shoot 25% from the floor. And if we're looking at the shot chart, let's see. Right. So Lawyer takes 15 shots, Renn takes 15 shots, Braden takes 9 shots. So between those two, there's 39, not counting the attempts that get them to the foul line, out of a total of 57 shots. So if two of those three are going to shoot 25% from the floor, this team isn't going to win many games. Do I believe that is going to happen very often? No. Also, just as a team as a whole, shoot 18% from three. I think the low on the season last year, if I remember right, was like 20%, 21%, and maybe one or two games the entire season. I don't expect to see that happening either. And to me, that bleeds into the other two issues that I think are real issues. Like, there is nothing offensively about this game that I'm looking at and getting real worried about, because they weren't just missing shots, Joe. They were missing wide open shots. There was a series in the second half at some point where Purdue had like 5 just wide open threes in a row. I think 4 different players shot those 5 threes. Every single one of them was off and wasn't particularly close to going in that particular stretch. So to me, they got plenty of good looks. Renn got a ton of wide open floaters in the first half that just didn't go down as well. And the two things that stand out that I think actually are issues was the rebounding and was the defense, especially protecting against all those like back cuts that Kentucky was running against us. And both of those issues to me are exacerbated by the fact that we miss shots, right? It's a disparity of 12 in the rebounding column, I think, on the total game. But when Purdue's missing as many shots as they're going to miss, that's just going to lend more opportunities for Kentucky to be able to rebound. And then you don't get your defense set, right? Then you're playing in transition. Then you're trying to recover. I think there were some issues trying to recover in transition. But Kentucky really wants to push the ball. They got a ton of three-point shooters standing out on the wings that they can spray it to in transition. So I think those two things are the major issues, rebounding and defense. But again, I think the fact that we just couldn't hit anything kind of really exacerbated that.
Yeah, so I'm with you on the offense. Like Painter, I think Painter said, and I don't know if it was our interview or if it was after the Purdue fan day scrimmages, but he's just like 20% of your games you're just not going to hit shots. Like it's just going to happen. Can you win those types of games? And I think right, it's an exhibition, so you don't want to put a blanket statement over it, but at the same time, it's going to be a tougher, very tough grind for them to kind of win those games. Now, I do think Braden has had a level he could probably tap into if he really wanted to. We'll talk about some of the rotation stuff. Like if it was right, if this was an Elite Eight game, I think TKR probably plays more than 27 or 28 minutes, whatever it was. So there are little things like that, but at the end of the day, they still put out this effort. They still put out this game, and right, there are things to be taken away, like you said. I'm with you with the defense, the rebounding. I think the defense, like my right, and I've said this on multiple shows, and like I don't take a ton away from exhibitions. It's just not like I take it's more things to like notes, like oh, I'm gonna kind of keep note of that to see what's going on there. Like defensively, it just felt like they were trying a bunch of stuff, and they were like it felt like how much help they wanted to send was dependent on who was in and kind of how they were wanting to defend different actions. Kentucky themselves, I think, is designed very well to like though like a Kentucky team is the team that's going to give Purdue a ton of issues defensively. Now, Purdue may just have issues defensively in general, but like Kentucky, especially, where they're able to run this kind of 5-out offense. And even if they don't have 5 shooters on the floor, they run this kind of 5-out where the big man's kind of moving the ball back and forth. So now that's drawing out Clough, that's drawing out Jacobson. And now, so when those back cuts happen, there's nobody at the rim. Like that, Kentucky's set up to where essentially Purdue had all the issues that they had last year because there just wasn't a rim protector because they were out towards the perimeter. Now, that's something I'm going to be monitoring. I saw like where I stand with it, and my takeaway, I guess, defensively is like Clough is good in a high hedge. Like he is good getting out individually. I don't. I don't think it's going to be 100% of the time. I just don't think it can be because when he's in that high hedge, it puts so much pressure on everybody else. And everybody else is kind of the point of the defense that needs to be protected outside of like CJ Jakari, Antoine West, like in Braden's hit and miss. But right, like that's the type of player, those are the players that need to be able to be protected. Like last year when they got blown by, it was layup lines. And you kind of saw that yesterday too, because the bigs had to be so far out. Now, like, again, I do think that they were just trying stuff defensively. There was times where it felt like they just right with Kentucky, what they would do is they had their 5 men at the top. They'd run pin downs on both sides, flow into potential handoffs. Purdue at times was switching those pin downs. Purdue at times was trying to stay at home, where then you're just trailing. And when the guards are trailing, it puts so much pressure then on the big to be able to hedge out, which I get that part. But then big slip, guys 45 cuts to the rim, nobody's there. So it's just going to be a work in progress. I think this team can get there by February. It might be a little bit rougher than I expected early on.
Yeah. I think it's important too to keep in mind, and I know we've mentioned this a couple of times, and Painter has 1,000 times. There is no scout for Purdue going into these exhibition games. And look, we know by and large, the last handful of years, like man on man, Purdue is not designed. Like Purdue rarely has super athletic guys that are just incredible singular defenders up top. Like it's probably been since No Gel, since we had like a true like elite perimeter defender from that standpoint, in my mind. But what Purdue does really well is scout that other team, figure out what they're going to take away, right? They're going to double a lot of times in the block. They're going to do certain things to force guys to their weak hand. They're going to ice a lot of times, or what they call red. They're going to do all these little different things specifically to try to maximize their team difference while kind of masking some of their individual defensive issues, right? They didn't do any of that for yesterday's game. We need to understand that. I think it's very, very fair to still openly say, hey, like, and Painter said it in the post-game press conference, like, we have to keep the ball in front of us at the point of attack. Have to. To me, I saw the same thing as you, maybe not with quite the description of the exact X's and O's, but in my head, I'm like, man, it doesn't seem like Clough's getting that many rebounds. And, you know, a few plays later, I'm like, well, he's 15 feet away from the basket because of where Kentucky's drawing him up. It's hard to get rebounds when you're there. And somebody put in the comments, which was something I saw as well, you know, in that situation, when they're doing that 5-out and your bigs pulled up, your guard's got to find a body.
Yep.
Like they have to. Even if you're not close to the rebound itself, you have to find a body. And there were so many times that somebody else's guy crashed in late and either got a putback or got a rebound. Stephen Tater Swingle specifically is calling out Meyer here. There were 2 times, Joe, and like, I think it's just instinctual, I'm sure, of what he was kind of taught to do overseas compared to maybe what Purdue needs him to do. There were 2 different times the ball hit the ground within like 2 feet of him. And he was turned and headed, like running down the other end of the court as fast as he could. And I'm like, grab the ball, Meyer. Like, grab the ball. What are we doing? That Kentucky ended up getting it. So I think some of that's just maybe changing a little bit in terms of like what's my role in those situations. Um, but yeah, I'm with you. I think a lot of it was we have one elite rebounder, and I still do think he's elite. I don't think just the fact that he only managed to get 5 in this game changes that. But so many times, him or Jacobson was completely pulled away from the rim, so everybody else has to step up and rebound.
Yeah, and we can. I'll pull up the stats here. I mean, it was a little bit. It definitely was by committee. TKR, Clough, and Jacobson all with 5 boards. Braden with 4, and then a handful of guys with adding in with 2. But yeah, when you compare it to what Kentucky was able to do, and it's skewed, right, because Purdue missed more shots, so then there's more opportunities for Kentucky to get boards. I didn't calculate the offensive rebounding percentage beforehand, and since this is an exhibition, KenPom does not do it for me. But I would assume that Kentucky won the offensive rebounding percentage battle as well. Side note, Eric Hunter, he might be the other elite perimeter defender since no gel.
True, true,
Maybe.
true. Yep. I got you. I can agree.
Yeah, and No Gel probably was better defensively, but Hunter's the last one that I would say at least fell somewhat in that category. So yeah, right. I think the defense is going to be the biggest concern going forward.